suivre les projets concrets de la CPE, qui pourraient être assurés par la troïka des présidences et le président du Conseil européen, et du coup, à chaque fois, de pouvoir prévoir les 2 présidences à venir, ce qui permettrait d'avoir en permanence des troïkas et un suivi des projets que nous lançons dans ce cadre. En tout cas, Eddy, merci de nous permettre de nous retrouver à Tirana, et merci pour l'hospitalité et l'amour lyrique de notre Europe que tu portes.
Thank you, and now it's an honor to give the floor to a special friend of all of us and my dear friend V, the President of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky.
Thank you so much, dear friend. Thank you so much, Eddy. Prime Minister Ramar, thank you, and thank you, Albania, for hosting us today. Not just in a beautiful country, but in a country that believes in Europe and stands for its future. Dear friends, thank you all for your support, and I appreciate that we share the same understanding. This war Russia against Ukraine must be ended as soon as possible and in a just way. Ukraine needs peace. Peace in Europe depends on whether Ukraine will get it. All of you know that this week we had a real chance to take important steps toward ending this war, if only Putin had not been afraid to come to Turkey. I was in Ankara yesterday, and thanks for participation and hosting us, President Erdogan. And I was ready for a direct meeting with Putin, whether in Ankara or in Istanbul, and not just for a meeting, but to resolve all the important issues to my mind. But he didn't agree to anything, Putin. And you can also see that the Russian delegation that came to Istanbul is of a very low level. None of them are people who actually make decisions in Russia. Still, I send our team to Istanbul, led by Ukraine's Minister of Defense, at least to see if those Russians can actually decide anything. Our #1 priority is a full, unconditional and honest ceasefire. This must happen immediately to stop the killing and create a solid basis for diplomacy, first of all. And if the Russian representatives in Istanbul today cannot even agree to that, to ceasefire, to this clearly necessary first step, then it will be 100% clear that Putin continues to undermine diplomacy. If that's not the case, there must be at least some result today, starting with a ceasefire. The Ukrainian delegation has a mandate to make decisions. As we saw yesterday, Russia sent almost the same people it sent in 2022. This shows that Russia has not changed its basic approach. They make many statements, many threats, but solve nothing. They are doing everything they can to turn this Istanbul meeting into a staged, empty process, just like the ones in 2022. It's not us or Western leaders who are disrupting the negotiation, as the Russians have been claiming for years. It's Russians who send empty heads to the talks. And that's what destroys the meaning of diplomacy. So if it turns out that the Russian delegation really is just theatrical and can't deliver any results today, the world must respond. There needs to be a strong reaction, including sanctions against Russia's energy sector and banks. Pressure must continue to rise until real progress is made. Ukraine is ready to take all realistic steps to end this war. I call on Putin to give his delegation real authority, and we need a full stop to the killing, long enough to give diplomacy a real chance. Secondly, we must build at least a minimum level of trust in the negotiation process. This can be done by releasing prisoners of war, returning Ukrainian children taken by Russia, and releasing civilian hostages currently held by the Russian side. Third, we need to clearly define which issues must be handled at the leadership level, not below. And we all know who makes the real decisions in Russia. Fourth, together with our leaders and together with the countries who are here with us today, we have begun to create a new security architecture for Ukraine and all of Europe. I thank everyone who is on board. Now it's time to move to very practical steps. And fifth, the United States. President Trump wants to end this war. We need to keep working closely with President and stay as coordinated as possible. Long-term US support is also essential. An American backstop is needed. It's important that we all work together on every level to make that happen. And of course, I will keep you informed throughout the day about what is happening in Istanbul and whether there is any chance the Russian delegation will take real steps to stop the killing and bring the war to an end. Thank you, Eddie, again for the invitation.
Thank you so much, and it's a particular honor to have here with us, and always a special guest in Albania, the President of Turkey, Recep Tayyip Erdoğan. Mr. President, you have the floor.
Değerli devlet ve hükümet başkanları, kıymetli katılımcılar, sizleri şahsım ve milletim adına saygıyla selamlıyorum. Avrupa Siyasi Topluluğu 6. zirvesinde sizlerle tekrar bir arada olmaktan büyük bir memnuniyet duyuyorum. Arnavutluk Başbakanı değerli dostum Sayın Edi Rama başta olmak üzere zirvenin düzenlenmesinde emeği geçenlere teşekkür ediyorum. Kıtamızı yeniden tanımlayacak yeni bir vizyonu konuşmak için bir araya geldik. Birlik içinde, işbirliği temelinde ve ortak eylem ruhuyla hareket etmemiz her zamankinden daha fazla önem taşıyor. Uluslararası alandaki güven bunalımının aşılması için adil ve kapsayıcı bir küresel yönetişim mimarisinin tesis edilmesine ihtiyaç var. Güvenliğin bölünmezliği ve refahın daha hakkaniyetli paylaşılması ilkeleri üzerinde bina edilecek bu dönüşümü bizler Avrupa kıtası olarak öncelikle kendi evimizde başlatmalıyız. Savunma sanayi, enerji, ulaştırma koridorları ve bağlantısallık, arz ve tedarik zincirleri, dijital piyasalar ve kritik mineraller gibi muazzam işbirliği potansiyeline sahip olduğumuz birçok alan bulunuyor. Avrupa güvenliğinin geleceğini istişare ettiğimiz bu kritik dönemde Avrupa Birliği'nin kendi savunma sanayisini geliştirmesine yönelik gayretler faydalıdır. Bu çabaların NATO'nun merkezi rolünü aşındırmayacak şekilde birlik üyesi olmayan müttefikleri de kapsaması gerektiğini düşünüyoruz. ReArm ve SAFE gibi girişimlerin bu anlayışla yürütülmesinin Avrupa güvenliğinin hayrına olacağına inanıyoruz. Geçmişte Avrupa'da yaşanan birçok savaş ve ihtilaf bize göstermiştir ki savunma ve güvenlik gibi son derece hayati olan konularda bölündükçe zayıflıyoruz, birleştikçe güçleniyoruz. Kıymetli dostlar, ortak geleceğimizi düşünürken hiç şüphesiz ekonomik güvenliğimizi teminat altına alacak adımları da istişare etmemiz gerekiyor. Türkiye 1,3 trilyon dolar ekonomik büyüklüğü, 85 milyonu aşan genç ve dinamik nüfusu, rekabetçi sanayisi ve büyük tüketim pazarlarına doğrudan erişimiyle kritik önemdedir. Avrupa Birliği ile gümrük birliğimizin güncellenmesinin tedarik zincirlerinin güvenliğine katkı sunacağı kanaatindeyiz. Ayrıca bu adımın otomotiv, ilaç, savunma sanayi gibi kritik sektörlerde ortak üretim ve yatırım imkanlarının önünü açacağına inanıyoruz. İnsanlarımızın ve dolayısıyla mal, hizmet ve sermayenin hareketliliğini kısıtlayan Schengen gibi vize uygulamalarının da gözden geçirilmesi şart. Son yıllardaki yatırımlarımızla ve doğalgaz alanındaki anlaşmalarla ülkemizi bölge coğrafyası için önemli bir enerji merkezi haline getirme hedefimize adım adım yaklaşıyoruz. Bölgenin en gelişmiş enerji altyapısına sahip ülkesi olarak enerji dönüşüm sürecinde Türkiye Avrupa'da önemli bir aktördür. Yenilenebilir enerji alanındaki adımlarımız sadece ülkemiz için değil, tüm bölge için fırsatlar sunuyor. Çok taraflı ulaştırma güzergahlarının merkezinde konumlanan Türkiye, Avrupa'nın kesintisiz tedarik zincirlerinin muhafazasına ciddi katkı sağlıyor. Değerli dostlar, Ukrayna'da silahların susması ve barış zemininin oluşturulması için kritik bir dönemeçteyiz. Geçmişte olduğu gibi bugün de kapsamlı bir ateşkes öncelikli olmak üzere çözüme dönük çabaların her birine katkı sağlıyoruz. Sürecin hassasiyetine binaen bir dayatmada bulunmaksızın tarafların teşvik edilmesi, adil ve kalıcı barışa ulaşılması bakımından çok önemlidir. Sayın Trump, Putin ve Zelenski ile ayrı ayrı görüşmelerimiz oldu. Sayın Macron ve Meloni beni aradılar. Zelenski dün Ankara'daydı. Kendisiyle görüşmemiz sonrasında teknik görüşmelere başlama kararı aldı. Mart 2022'den bu yana ilk kez akan kanı durdurma noktasında önemli bir fırsat penceresi aralandı. Nitekim şu anda İstanbul'da Dışişleri Bakanımın riyasetinde görüşmeler Rusya, Ukrayna, Türkiye arasında devam ediyor. Bunun heba edilmemesi gerektiğine inanıyorum. Gelinen aşamada barışın süratle tesisi için Ukrayna ve Rusya arasında diyalog kanallarının açık tutulması için buradaki tüm ortaklarımızın desteğine güveniyoruz. Her zaman ifade ettiğim gibi adil bir barışın kaybedeni olmayacaktır. Türkiye bu süreçte üzerine düşenleri yapmaya devam edecektir. Sayın devlet ve hükümet başkanları, Gazze'de 20 aydır eşi görülmemiş bir insani felaket yaşanıyor. Her gün çoğu çocuk ve kadın, onlarca masum katlediliyor. Buna dur demek, artık yeter demek mecburiyetindeyiz. Netanyahu'nun uzlaşmaz, saldırgan ve kibirli tutumu Gazze ile birlikte tüm bölgemizi, burada yaşayan farklı inançlardan insanları da tehlikeye atıyor. Gazze'de ateşkesin tesisi için de Avrupa'nın gereken iştiyak ve ilgiyi göstermesini bekliyoruz. Gazze'de 2 milyondan fazla insanın açlığa mahkum edilmesi karşısında uluslararası camianın eylemsiz kalması ne vicdani kıstaslarla ne insanlık onuruyla bağdaşmaktadır. Kalıcı ateşkesin yanı sıra insani yardım sevkiyatının teminat altına alınması ve Gazze'nin yeniden yaşanabilir hale getirilmesi için de tüm imkanlarımızı seferber etmeliyiz. Esas hedefimiz ise sürdürülebilir, tek çözümü teşkil edecek olan iki devletli çözümü hayata geçirmek olmalıdır. Suriye'de yaklaşık 14 yıldır süren çatışmaların sona ermesiyle yeni ve umut dolu bir sayfa açılmıştır. Amerikan Başkanı Sayın Trump'ın Suriye'ye yönelik yaptırımları kaldıracağını duyurması, Suriye'nin bir an önce refaha kavuşması için atılmış çok kıymetli bir adımdır. Bu kararıyla Sayın Trump, bölgesel istikrara ve kalkınmaya verdiği önemi bir kez daha göstermiştir. Söz konusu kararın diğer ülkelere de örnek olmasını diliyoruz. Avrupa Birliği tarafından sabık rejime yönelik getirilen yaptırımların aynı şekilde ivedilikle kaldırılmasını, yeniden imar faaliyetleri için mali destek sağlanmasını bekliyoruz. Elbette bu destek, ülke dışındaki Suriyelilerin gönüllü, onurlu ve güvenli geri dönüşlerini de hızlandırıcı bir etki yapacaktır. Kıymetli devlet ve hükümet başkanları, belirsizliklerin arttığı mevcut ortam, bizleri ortak çözümler etrafında kenetlenmeye mecbur kılıyor. Dayanışmayı, kaynaklarımızı iyi kullanmayı ve samimi işbirliğini sağladığımızda kıta olarak üstesinden gelemeyeceğimiz tehdit ve sınama kalmayacağına canı gönülden inanıyorum. Bu düşüncelerle toplantımızın güvenli, müreffeh ve istikrarlı bir Avrupa için hayırlar getirmesini temenni ediyor. Hepinize saygılarımı sunuyorum.
Thank you very much. Now it's an honor on behalf of the people of the Protectorate of Albania to give the floor to the Italian Prime Minister and Protector of our country, Giorgia Meloni.
Dear colleagues, good morning everyone, and let me say thanks to Eddie, not for being a protectorate, but for his warm hospitality in the summit, and also for making me feel very young again with that video he showed in the inauguration. And I want also to congratulate Eddie for his absolutely unexpected re-election as the leader here of the Albanian government. I'm happy that Europe will continue to count on his spirit and his determination. Albania is hosting the European political community for the first time. I value it as particularly significant, not only for this nation, but for all of us. I have always considered the European identity as fact, established by history even before geography. A concept harder to enclose in a definition than to understand by impulse. Albania is, of course, Europe, just like Italy or Serbia or Norway, regardless of whether they are part of this or that organization. That is why it always makes me smile when someone attempts to claim the right to decide who's European and who's not. Among the states that are around this table today, several have decided not to join the EU, others aspire to be part of it. Both are no less European than the 27 EU member states. Yet the EU is today the soundest common home to achieve what I like to call the European reunification, attained amongst people who may differ from one another, and yet they are a part of one whole, like the different fingers of a hand. Peoples who have fought each other over the centuries, yet are in reality one single people. Also, for this reason, being here today means taking a step forward in the historic process of reunifying Europe, because if we really want to build a new Europe in a new world, we cannot imagine doing so without the Western Balkans, without their peoples, without their identities and historical backgrounds. Western Balkans do not lie on Europe's finger or beyond our continent. They are in the very heart of our continent. They are the bridge region between the East and the West, between what St. John Paul II liked to call the two lungs of Europe. For this reason, Italy is committed in Brussels to asserting a strategic approach to the Western Balkans to take into due account, despite the complex challenges posed by the region, the need to provide these countries with a clear EU integration perspective. Of course, enlargement involves new challenges, but I'm convinced that the European integration of Western Balkans, as well as towards the East, is also a strategic investment on Europe's own security, even more so in light of what is happening on our borders. We live in an extremely interconnected world. Our destinies, interdependence is fact. What happens on Europe's eastern borders is connected with what happens on its Mediterranean borders and vice versa. The wound that Russia's wars of aggression against Ukraine has inflicted on the rules-based international system still produces destabilizing effects well beyond the war borders. And like a domino, this contributes to reigniting or detonating other crisis hotbeds. We have witnessed this in the Middle East, and not only there. That is why we will continue to stand by Ukraine and to strive for this war to immediately come to an end, because our security and freedom depend on restoring the force of law over the law of the strongest. And speaking of Europe and freedom, I believe it is nothing more European than a people willing to risk everything to defend its own freedom and independence. Every day, the heroism and tenacity of the Ukrainian people reminds us what Europe is and what the deepest aspect of our common identity is: freedom. We defend our freedom and we want peace. Volodymyr and the Ukrainian people want peace, and we newly witnessed it yesterday. The world saw who was really willing to sit at a negotiation table and who was not. And this shows also with respect to certain propaganda who looks for peace and who doesn't. At the same time, we must not interpret what happened yesterday as a setback and throw in the towel. Instead, we must insist with determination to finally achieve an unconditional ceasefire and a true peace agreement with serious security guarantees for Ukraine, and we are absolutely ready to do what is needed to reach this goal. However, colleagues, I do agree with many things that Eddie said in his speech, but building a new Europe in a new world, as advocated by this session, means, in my opinion, before talking about what we have to do, starting from our very foundations and reflecting mainly on who we are. None of us is interested in strengthening any form of union amongst European states, if not for protecting what we are and what we want to continue to be in the coming decades and centuries in such a fast-changing world. Because if Europe sometimes proves unable to face the great challenges, it is no one else's fault. It is our responsibility. And it is up to us to choose whether to go along a decline or instead fight it. And if we decide to fight it, first of all, we need to regain awareness, which is mainly awareness of who we are, what the European civilization is, of the great achievements it has accomplished across the history of humankind. A synthesis of values, resulting from the encounter between Greek philosophy, Roman law, Christian humanism, a synthesis of values that allowed European civilization to conceive a world in which the person is central, life is sacred, and human beings are free and equal. A civilization that respects the identities of the others without denying its own, and that builds peace where instead others see destruction. We are this. We are this before everything. And I think we have, first of all, to remember it every day if we want to build a Europe up to the role received from history. Thank you.
Thank you, and with true gratitude for his historical visit yesterday as the first Prime Minister of United Kingdom to ever land in Albania for a bilateral meeting, and with the worldwide known Balkan spirit of forgiveness for having brought such an intense rain, I'm honored to give the floor to the Prime Minister of United Kingdom, Keir Starmer. Thank you, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Eddie, and it's really good to see everyone around the table here today. And thank you, Eddie, for bringing us together. I would remind you it was sunny when I got off the plane yesterday morning. We brought the sun from London, and this rumour that the weather is down to the British is completely wrong. But look, you've brought us together, Eddie. It is a really important day, a really important meeting, because this is a crucial moment for our continent. And that's been reflected, I think, in the remarks of everybody so far. And I was struck by your opening words, Eddie, because we are entering a new era. We are all saying that, and we need to recognise that it's a new era, but it's one characterised by volatility and instability, sadly. That is the new era that we are entering. As we do so, the opportunity for all European leaders to come together, each of us facing challenges for our security and our economies. I think as we do that, the value of the EPC could not be clearer. So it is very important that we're here today. That's why I was so pleased to host the summit last year at Blenheim Palace, very shortly after my government was elected, within the first 2 weeks. I was very pleased because it was very important for me to signal our intent from the very beginning to work more closely with our European partners and strengthen the UK's relationship with the EU, not based on rehashing arguments about the past, but looking forward to the future. And since then, as you'll have seen, we've dramatically stepped up our engagement with European allies, recognising that partnership is vital to our delivery of security and renewal, and particularly to working people in the UK who want that security and that renewal and deserve it. And we will be strengthening our alliances across Europe, which is why I was really pleased, Eddie, to be the first British Prime Minister to come for a bilateral visit here to Albania and work with you as our partners. And that's why I'm very pleased to be hosting Ursula and Antonio in London on Monday for the first UK-EU summit, a very important moment in this new era, and a moment that is about recognising that many of the challenges we face, whether that's migration, growth, security, they are shared challenges, and only shared solutions will solve them. And obviously, our most urgent challenge here today is securing a just and lasting peace for Ukraine, a just and lasting peace. Those words, just and lasting, being so important. And that is why it's vital that we all step up to do more for our own defence. And last week I announced a major package of sanctions on the Russian shadow fleet, ramping up the pressure on Putin and protecting our critical infrastructure. And Emmanuel and I have worked very hard with many of you in recent months to bring together political and military leaders under our coalition of the willing, and I thank everybody who's been part of that. And of course, together with Friedrich and Donald, we joined Vladimir in Kyiv last weekend, not just an important symbol of solidarity and support 80 years after the end of the Second World War, and a reminder that the values that were fought for 80 years ago are precisely the same values that we are fighting for tomorrow, at the moment, in relation to Ukraine, but also an important moment to bring together, and supported by President Trump, the argument about an unconditional ceasefire, that Putin must come to the table for that unconditional ceasefire, and to issue, as we did last weekend, that ultimatum. Now, having issued that ultimatum, we must be prepared to follow through, because if Russia won't come to the negotiating table, Putin must pay the price. And I think yesterday, as already been mentioned, was further evidence that Putin is not serious about peace. Russia is dragging its feet and playing games, whilst Ukraine has shown itself to be the party of peace. And Vladimir, your leadership throughout this conflict, your leadership in fighting the Russian aggression and the resilience and courage of the Ukrainian people is, I think, something for us all to hold up, but also your leadership in the fight for peace, because it was you that put on the table some weeks ago now the unconditional ceasefire. So Ukraine is clearly the party of peace, and we all need to line up as allies to ensure that we get the ceasefire that is desperately needed and deliver sanctions if that is necessary. And the United Kingdom is fully committed to playing our full part, which is why we've boosted our defence spending to 2.5% of GDP in 2027, with the clear ambition to reach 3% in the next Parliament. And I know others here are stepping up, obviously, as well, so that together we deliver a generational shift in European defence and tackle the challenges that undermine our stability and security. And those challenges include migration, a challenge that preys on the most vulnerable and places a huge strain on our immigration system, as well as our public services. And that's why I put illegal migration on the agenda at Blenheim, why I chaired a discussion on the topic in Budapest. I'm really pleased, Eddie, that you include it again on the agenda for today. Because the truth is, this is a challenge that crosses our borders, a challenge we have to confront together. All of our citizens want an immigration system that is fair and that works for the national interest. And now is the time to work together to secure our shared borders. And this approach is already paying off. Yesterday, I visited Durrës port and saw firsthand how the UK is working with Albanian law enforcement to disrupt cross-border crime. And in March, I hosted the first major international summit to tackle organised immigration crime, highlighting work with European partners that is already driving results. But now is the time to do more across the board on immigration, national security, and we all know it's absolutely critical to our economic security as well. So in a new era for trade and the economy, we will increase our resilience, strengthen our alliances, and reduce barriers to trade with our allies around the world and across Europe. In this time of great uncertainty and volatility, the UK will not respond by turning inwards, but by taking its place on the world stage, strengthening our alliances, supporting freedom and peace in Europe. And I thank you, Adi, again for convening us today in pursuit of those common themes and issues.
Thank you very much, and it is a unique privilege to have the chance to congratulate in person in Tirana newly elected Chancellor of Germany. And it is, I believe, a lifetime chance to be the Prime Minister of Albania and have in your hands the possibility to give or not give the floor to the German Chancellor. So the floor is yours, dear Chancellor Merz, and congratulations, and we all look forward for the leadership of Germany.
Thank you, Prime Minister, dear Edi Rama. Many thanks for your warm welcome and many thanks for your hospitality here in Tirana. And let me say that I'm very happy to be here and to have the honor and opportunity to be with you first time in this distinguished group of political leaders of Europe. Thank you to all of you who sent congratulations to my election, and I'm looking forward to a very close cooperation myself, but our new government as well, with all of you. So it's strongly needed, but we are ready to do so. Having said that, allow me to focus on 2 or 3 issues briefly. The first one is this European continent is challenged by something which we have not yet seen for decades, which is a very tough and strong war in Ukraine. This is not just a war against this country. If it were so, it was critical and terrible enough. But this is something which is directed against the entire political order of our continent. So you all know that Donald, Keir, Emmanuel and myself, we went to Kiev to see President Zelensky last Saturday. And we did that not just on our own behalf. Hopefully we did that on behalf of all of you, to show our decision and our commitment to this country and to this European political order. And we are determined, the 4 of us, and I hope all of you, that we have to continue to give support, strong support, politically, economically, financially, militarily, to this country. And our efforts have shown a very, very small diplomatic success. The fact that they are meeting today, first time for 3.5 years, is a very small but first positive signal. We have to do more on that, on diplomatic efforts, but we have to be very clear on our...
Rusiya tərəfinə isə 41 hərbçinin meyidi qaytarılıb. Rusiya-Ukrayna münaqişəsinin nizamlanması ilə bağlı danışıqlara ev sahibliyi edən İstanbulda daha bir mühüm toplantı